Hello and welcome to another video for Eve University. I am Amoni Panala. You probably know me as Zipporah Panala or Camille Panala, depending on when you met me in Eve University, if you know me at all. As I said, this is a class to benefit Eve University, and I have done all the core classes, so we're going to dive into classes that I teach outside of the core classes that Eve University covers. Today we're going to be talking about safe travel. This is a class that about a year ago I took out of mothball and started teaching because I kept seeing Unistas getting blown up for stupid reasons. And I don't mean that in any judgmental way, but I thought that if I taught this class, it might help reduce some of the risk that people take when they travel in New Eden. So we're going to be talking about the threats in different areas of space because there are threats in every level of space, and we're going to talk about the tools you can use to get through space safely. We'll talk about some techniques and other in-game tools to help get through safely. We'll do a brief overview of hauling. I'm not going to go super in-depth. A previous version of this class did have more in-depth stuff on hauling, but it just was too much information and not really what the focus of this class is. We do have an intro to hauling or like a hauling class, which maybe I'll start teaching because I was part of the uni hauling service for a while, and I do love hauling. It's one of my chill out activities. And then we'll talk about some additional resources that Eve University provides. And since there are no questions from a class, which would normally happen at the end of the class, if you have questions, you can leave those as a comment to this video, and I will get to them as soon as I can. So this is just at a glance. These are some of the things that make each section of space dangerous, right? I'm not going to go through each one, just kind of giving you an overview of some of the things that make this space dangerous, right? So in HiSec, the first one you might encounter is Eden-Com-Triglavian War. Now, members of Eve University, you're going to be familiar with Eden-Com because uh, our staging system is an Eden-Com system. Um, the Eden-Com is a response fleet to the Triglavian invasion. The Triglavians are people from far off, basically. Like, I mean, to use wrestling terms, they're from unknown parts. Um, they are in sort of a Cold War. At one point, they were explicitly at war. Then it kind of cooled off when the Triglavians made Pochven. And now what happens is you'll go through HiSec. Um, if you're brand new to the game, you'll get a little pop-up that says you're entering an Edencom system or you're entering a Triglavian system. Do you want to proceed? Um, Most people, the first time they see that, they just hit do not remind me about this again, and they never see that pop up again. That's fine. But the thing you need to keep in mind is if you have done anything, taken any aggressive action against Edencom, you will lose standings with Edencom. And if your standings are below zero, at even just the slightest bit, 0.0001, right? Below zero, Edencom will attack you in their systems in HiSec. So With the Triglavians, on the other hand, you must have positive standings with the Triglavians. Otherwise, when you enter a Triglavian system, they might decide to attack you. Now, it is random. You can get through Edencom and Triglavian systems without any incident. I do it all the time. I'm negative to Edencom on my main account because I have done some Pochven activity, and it involves shooting. It involves shooting Edencom. It's fine. The thing you want to keep in mind is that for newer players, this might be really scary. Um, some of the Sometimes you'll get like big fleets on the gate, and they will scram you. They will newt you out, though they will blow you up if you're in the wrong kind of ship to avoid them. So here's what you do instead. Eve University, every once in a while, does these fleets. They're called dual standing or standings fleets. And all they do is they go to Pochven, they shoot a couple rogue drones, and everybody gets their standings increased by the slightest amount. But now they're positive with Edencom and Dringlavian, unless, of course, you've already done something to piss off the Edencom or Triglavian factions. Um, so that's something you can do. Gankers are another problem in high six. So gankers are people who uh, their play style is to blow up ships in that are doing random things. So this could be haulers on their way to Jita. This could be miners just doing their own thing, and it's just a part of the game. And the best thing that you can do to avoid gankers is to use intelligence tools. And we're going to talk about gathering intel as you travel, especially for hauling, but also for you miners. I know a lot of people like to mine AFK. Maybe they're at work, right? Maybe they're whatever the case may be. If you're gonna mine AFK, you need to be aware that you are a big target for gankers, for people who just wanna mine a little salt from you, right? Make you a little mad, get you to comment in local about how mad you are, right? That's that's some people's play style, and you know, scummy as it might feel when it happens to you, that is just part of this game. Um, the best thing that you can do, right, is one, not be AFK, right? Like even just being passively aware of what's going on, checking your D-scan, things like that, makes it so much harder for people to gank you because it's not hard to notice when the catalyst shows up. It's not hard to notice when the tornadoes show up. It's not hard to notice when the cloaky decloaks on grid. Um, they're being ganked as a miner is something that absolutely can happen when you're not expecting it, but it's a lot harder for gankers to get a kill on you if you are paying attention. Obviously, if you're at work and you're just doing some passive mining, hey, I'm not here to judge you, but just be aware that you are more likely to lose your ships because of that. So, the other thing to keep in mind, and we do have a class all about war, um, and the mechanics of high-sec wars. But in high-sec, is a mechanic called war declarations, where corporations or alliances can declare war on other corporations and alliances, making them legal targets to shoot. So basically, they bribe Concord, the police of New Eden, and they get permission to declare war on other corporations. So if you see a blinking red star next to a character's name in local, you will know that character is a war target, meaning that they can shoot you and Concord will not respond. Now, Eve University is pretty aggressive about addressing war declarations. Long time ago, we used to dock up when we were war decked and there were war targets nearby. Um, but nowadays, if we get war decked, we just go and blow up their war HQ. That's basically what we do. There's no, we don't play around with that anymore. It's kind of nice because war declarations usually only last for a couple days until we blow up their war HQ. But, the other thing to keep an eye out for is faction warfare targets. So if you enlist in faction warfare militia of any variety, right? Amar, Keldari, Galente, Minmatar, um, you will be a valid target for your opposing side. So if you're in Amar, the Minmatar militia folks can shoot you in high sec. If you enlist in the Galente, the Keldari militia folks can shoot you at any time. I will also point out if you enlist in Galente militia and you are currently enlisted, do not go to Jita. That's a great way to get yourself owned by the faction military. Um, so the NPCs, Keldari Space, they will chase you down and shoot you, um, and that's the faction military NPCs. Now, when you go to Jita, that is Keldari Space. The faction military are very aggressive there. So don't go to Jita if you're enlisted in Keldari militia or in the Galente militia. Now you can unenlist, you can retire, and then re-enlist later if you really need to go to Jita on that tune. But hopefully you are either using one of the services we're going to talk about later, or you have a hauling alt that is not enlisted in Galente militia. Um, so the other semi-related thing is the pirate insurrection. So since the Havoc expansion, um, you can now enlist in the pirate militia, join the pirate insurrection, and be a part of spreading chaos in low-sec. Now you might be saying, Camille, why do you care about low-sec if you're in high-sec? The reality is that pirate pirates can attack you in high sec if you are a part of the opposing side. So there are two pirate factions, Angels and Garistas, um, and each of those two is at war with two of the Empire factions, either the Keldari and the Galente, or the Amar and the Minmatar. Um, but more importantly is what happens if the pirates are successful in their objectives. Because what happens is low-sec systems become corrupted, and that corruption spreads to nearby systems. So potentially, high-sec systems can become corrupted and start to behave like low-sec, meaning that PvP will become legal in high-sec systems. So it's a thing to pay attention to. There have been a couple times where the corruption has spread to our high-sec staging in Stackmon. I don't think it's ever gotten to the point where we were actually concerned that PvP was going to be like a thing we had to worry about. Corruption lasts for a certain period of time and then it diminishes automatically, but it is something to be aware of as someone who is living in high sec. Lastly, I do want to say that if you are a member of Eve University, you must use the Eve University overview. If you're not sure how to do that, there's a wiki page on it. There's an in-game channel explaining how to set it up. Um, Everyone in Eve University must use the Eve University overview. The reason for this is that we are not allowed to shoot other EVE University members, even if they are in opposing faction warfare, militias. So if you're enlisted in Caldari and some other folks are enlisted in Galente, you cannot shoot the Galente members who are because they are in EVE University. And it is important that you use the EVE University overview so that the fact that they are in your corps overrides the fact that they are in the faction military, or in the faction militia. Um, we have all of that set up very carefully to make sure that everyone knows who's a friendly. We don't shoot our friends. Um, Trust me, it's a big headache when it happens. Um, Not that it doesn't ever happen, but when it does, it can be a real headache. Feelings get hurt, all that. It's just not worth it. Now, moving on to LowSec. LowSec is going to be the place where PvP starts happening on the regular. PvP is legal in LowSec, and the only thing that prevents PvP is gate camps. But gate camps are, sorry, not gate camps, gate guns. Gate guns are the only thing stopping PvP in LowSec. There is no Concord response to PvP in LowSec. Now, the gate guns will shoot the first person who aggresses in LowSec on the gate. However, the gate guns will switch to the next aggressor if the first one warps off. So naturally, what happens is you will have people stacked up on the gate. They'll start shooting a target, and then they just warp off as soon as the gate guns start shooting them. And then when they come back, the gate guns are no longer shooting them, and it's fine. So be aware of that. Gate guns do not really stop PvP, and you shouldn't rely on gate guns to protect you, unless whatever's trying to shoot you is very, very squishy. But generally, don't rely on gate guns to save you. But that does bring up one of the biggest threats in LowSec, and that is gate camps, right? So I have a screenshot here from Tama on the Norvikaken gate. If you see something like this, right, that's a gate camp on the Norvikaken gate. These folks are waiting for you to land on that Norvikaken gate. You're trying to take the LowSec pipeline to Jita as a shortcut because it's a lot of jumps going through HighSec. So you thought you would cut corners and go through LowSec. Well, now you run into this. This is a gate camp. They're waiting for you on the Norvikaken gate. They will absolutely annihilate you when you land. So be aware that is a thing. And we'll talk about how to avoid those in a minute here. The other thing, as I said with HighSec, the pirate insurrection and corruption levels, right? So before it even spreads to the surrounding areas, the pirate corruption is going to be starting in LowSec, and it spreads outward. So you might, in HighSec, see corruption level 1, but then when you make it to the LowSec systems, you might see pirate corruption level 5. At pirate corruption level 5 is when things get really weird and LowSec starts behaving like Null-sec. One of the major things that happens is people can use bubbles. Bubbles stop you from warping. If you're caught inside a bubble, you can't warp off. We're going to talk more about that when we get to Null-sec, and then I'll talk about how you get out of it. So, Null-sec. Speak of the devil, here's a picture of a bubble. I always found it was kind of weird trying to describe a bubble because everybody has their own context for the word bubble. And so I thought I would just try to get a screenshot for the new version of this presentation. for this class. Um, so now there are a number of threats in nullsec. They're not necessarily unique. I think the one big thing that's unique to nullsec is the roaming fleets. You're very rarely are you going to find roaming fleets in lowsec. It does happen, but just not nearly as often as it does in nullsec. So a roaming fleet is just going to be a group of pilots flying together. They're looking for something to shoot, and if you're there and they're bored or you have something juicy, they might try to blow you up. So be aware of that. The other is, yes, gate camps happen in nullsec, especially on gates from to and from lowsec. You will see a lot of gate camps. Um, Drag bubbles are a thing, so drag bubbles will catch you and prevent you from landing on your desired gate, and then they will blow you up once you're caught in that bubble. So those are the things to be aware of. We'll talk about how to get around them in a little bit here. In wormhole space is arguably my favorite kind of space. It's my favorite playstyle. Um, Wormhole space is unique in that it has very little intel available. There is no local. Um, a lot of things don't work the way they do in K space or known space, where high sec, low sec, null sec. Um, your overview is not going to tell you much about the system that you're in. Everything has to be scanned down. PvP can happen anytime in wormhole space. There's no Concord, there's no gate guns, nothing like that. Um, the the thing that you know the thing that you have to do is be brave and be smart. So wormhole is dangerous because there's very little that you can tell just by jumping into a wormhole system. And PvP can and will happen basically anytime. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into Pochven. Pochven would be its own class if we were to get super into it. Pochven is a unique area of space that was created by the Triglavians after they gobbled up a couple systems from different empires and created this unique space. It's a giant triangle. I don't know what it is with the Triglavians and triangles, but they really love their triangles, so we'll give it to them. Um, they have created this unique space that acts a lot like wormhole space. So all the dangers of wormhole space, you're going to find that in Pochven. The other thing to keep in mind is that Pochven is connected by wormholes. It's connected by filaments, and so it's a very busy place. Uh, the number of people that live there is debatable. Um, it's a big crab. It's crab central there. The sites there can net you a lot of money if you're brave enough and have the right ships for it. But also people use it as a shortcut to other places, and so there's a lot of people passing through there. Fleets pass through there as a shortcut, so be aware. It can be really dangerous because so many people are passing through it all the time. Now we're going to transition to talking about how to get around safely and the tools that you use to do that. The first is going to be Eve Gate Check. If you're not familiar with Eve Gate Check, it is a tool that allows you to enter your starting destination, or sorry, your starting location and your destination. You can select shortest or most secure, and it's going to give you information on the kills that have happened on the gate in each system on your route. So here I have Stackmon to Jita. It's 17 jumps and it's telling me all the kills that have happened. So I'd like to point out, Udama, that's a pretty popular place for gankers. The 2 kills that did happen here are from Concord, which means that a gank happened earlier, but it had to have been more than an hour ago because Concord only responds to aggression in high-sec, right? So if there was a kill by Concord, any sort of aggression by a pilot, that's what they're responding to. So we know that a gank hasn't happened in an hour, but there was a gank in the last couple hours because Concord blew up somebody on the Savala Gate and then somewhere else in Udama. We can also see there's some funny stuff happening in Jita. It's not clear to me if like these are people at the station just blapping, like haulers that are undocking, or if it is war. A lot of times, when corporations have high-sec wars going on, you will see a lot of kills in Jita because they're shooting each other in Jita. People are getting ganked because they're at war and they took their in-corp character to Jita, which is not smart. But generally, that's what I assume is going on here. I highly recommend that you log into your Eve University character if you are in Eve University, because you will get this additional information. So this information about the Concord police captain and this stuff here, this is all part of the premium. The free version just gives you the route, how many kills, and which gate they happened at, right? So you're only getting this first line here on the details. All this other stuff, that's the premium information with the time. Um, so do be aware of that. Log into your Eve Uni character, or your Unitune, as some people call it, and just you'll get that extra information when you look up routes on Eve GateCheck. Another tool you can use is Udama Scout. Udama Scout is a Twitch live stream that captures live footage of different areas of space where ganking is common to give people the most up-to-date information on where ganking might be happening. As you can see, there's a scout in Amazon. It looks like there's been some ganking here, but there's no one on the gate right now. So ganking happened within the last few hours, but hasn't happened just now. You can see in, I can't tell where this is. This is probably Amazon, but you have some known gankers in system. You've got all kinds of information here. Now, this is a lot of information. Honestly, for me personally, this is cognitive overload, but some people might find this beneficial to use. So I share it with you. If you're not the kind of person who looks at this and says, oh yeah, this makes sense, I know what's going on here. If you're not the kind of person who gets cognitive overload just looking at this, um, this is for you. Other folks, if you're looking at this and it's way too much, that's okay. Don't worry about it. There are other tools. So, and of course, there is local. Now, local is an incredibly useful tool that should not be neglected just because it's there and you've had it since day one. Local will tell you who is in system. Local tells you who is blue, green, or purple, right? So allies, court mates, and people in your fleet that are in system. You will also see war targets, which is the blinking red stars, faction warfare targets, the orange blinking stars. Folks with low security standings will be a white skull with a little orange border. You'll also see suspect and criminal, which are going to be orange and red blinking skulls, respectively. Um, Now, if you see suspect or criminal, watch out for those people. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're in danger, but it does mean you need to watch out. If they land on grid with you and you're mining, get the heck out of there. They're probably there to cause trouble. If you see somebody with low security standings, that's probably the least threatening of all. But you know, you can look up that if you're really concerned, if there's some rando with low security standings just hanging out nearby your mining fleet and they've got a catalyst or a tornado or something like that, look up their kill board on Zkill and see what have they been up to. Um, because chances are they have those low security standings for a reason, and they're probably there to cause trouble. So just keep an eye out, use local, pay attention to what's going on if you're going to be out in K space. Obviously, if you're in wormhole space or Pochven, local doesn't work, so it's kind of useless. The most I use local for is just like posting 80s pop lyrics and saying good fight. So now dscan is another tool that you have from day one, but new players probably don't even know they have it. So dscan is a tool that comes from um, your system map, and we have a whole class on dscan. I made a video class about it, so if you want to watch that class, go ahead, watch that class, come back to this one. Dscan is essentially sonar, but for space. Super useful like that. Um, it has a max range of 14.3 AU. You can adjust that down if you want to. You can also change the angle. So by default, I believe it's set to like 90, but I generally keep mine at 360 to get a full all-around view. And then you want to shrink that angle down if you're searching for something or just trying to focus on a specific area. If you're behind it, if you're in a dead space pocket and you're behind a gate or something, and you want to see when somebody slides the gate, you could set that to 1 AU, 360 degrees, and that'll, help you. Um, you can also filter the results and, again, take the DScan class for more information, but it is worth saying you can filter what you see in your DScan, and there's a number of different ways to do that. So, also Intel channels. Now, if you're not in Eve University, I don't know how your Intel is communicated, but in Eve University, on Discord, we have Intel channels that we share information even out of game. Please pay attention to those Intel channels, especially all you K-spacers. We have one Intel channel for the high sec, low sec, and null sec activity going on. Um, WHC has its own Intel channel because most of what they need to share is not related to anything in K-space, and um, most of what is shared about K-space intel is not relevant for WHC. It's not because WHC is special, it's just because the information that they need to communicate with each other is totally unrelated to what's going on in K-space. The FCs also have their own intel channel, which gives information that is specific to things that FCs might need to plan or react to. So um, if you are going to post in the intel channel, keep it brief. Tell us who, tell us what, tell us where, right? I gave you a relatively good example here. It says it's on the stack gate, the Stackmon gate in Austin Galley, and then it has a screenshot of what's there. Um, the other thing I will say is don't have a conversation in the intel channels. Keep them clean. Uh, Try to keep it just intel that's being communicated. If you need to have a conversation with someone, either start a thread or tag that person in another channel where you ask questions or make comments and start a conversation about something that's posted in Intel. But for goodness sake, do not start conversations. Do not just start a conversation in an Intel channel because that buries the Intel. All right, transitioning to tools that are more in-game rather than out-of-game tools. The first and foremost is the mighty, mighty shuttle. Shuttles are wonderful, wonderful ships. They're cheap, they are small, they warp fast, they align fast, um, and they will get you where you're going. Most of the time, they will get you there safely. So, the thing about the shuttle, in addition to the fact that it warps at 5 AUs per second, in addition to the fact that it aligns immediately, um, it also is immune to bubbles. So the threat of bubbles that I was talking about in nullsec and wormhole space doesn't apply to shuttles. They are immune to them. Um, so they're extremely useful, right? And they're so cheap. Uh, so I highly recommend that if you are just trying to get from A to B, and you don't need to be flying a specific ship, just fly a shuttle. Shuttles will get you there. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is that shuttles are weak to smart bombs. So if you are going through low sec, be aware that you are susceptible to smart bombs in your shuttle. This is one of the reasons why you should not be carrying expensive stuff in your shuttle. I know that your very, very nice T2 BPOs can fit in a shuttle, but you absolutely should not be carrying those in a shuttle. In fact, if you do have T2 BPOs, you shouldn't be moving them at all. Just put them in an NPC station and leave them alone. Now, we talked about getting around bubbles. Bubbles are just a fact of life for nullsec and wormhole space. Now, I'm going to use our NSC as an example here. So this is JHTAC M2W. That is a system just outside of our staging system in PC9TAC AY. Um, and in this scenario, you're coming from Stackmon, you're going to hang out in NSC, see what that nullsec life is like for folks. Um, you know, maybe you'll become a permanent resident of NSC. That would be fun. Um, so you just jumped into JHTAC from CTAC or 6TAC C, um, and you're going to warp to the PC9 gate. Now, if you are in uh, anything other than a shuttle, and there's this bubble here on the backside of the PC9 TAC AY gate, you're going to end up in that bubble. Instead of landing on the gate, it's going to pull you and drag you into this bubble. This is where the drag bubble comes from. Now, the way to get around this is to use bookmarks or pings. Um, Eve University has some public tacticals that you can use if you don't have your own. I will say that those tacticals are known to just about everyone and their mother. So do be aware that if you are going to use those, everybody knows them. So do not assume that somebody can't get to you when you're at one of those bookmarks. But what you're going to do is you're going to warp to a bookmark that's at least 150 away from the gate, and it's going to be generally it's going to be on either side of the gate, and then you're gonna see that bubble, and you're gonna be like, okay, glad I warped to this bookmark, and then you're gonna warp to the gate and jump. It needs to be at least 150, otherwise you won't be able to warp. Um, Generally, the pings are going to be 200, maybe even 400 off the gate, so that you can see the gate. You're on grid with the gate. You can see what's going on. You can see if there are ships on the gate, but you're not on the gate and you won't be caught by drag bubbles. If you don't have bookmarks and you're going through low-sec or null-sec, corrupted low-sec or null-sec, warp to a planet first. So warp to a planet, then warp to the gate, right? Because then what that does is that interrupts, instead of being in line with this warp path, now you're breaking it up and you're warping to, moon 1 or planet 1. Don't warp to moons. Warp to planets, not moons. So you warp to this planet, and then you come down to BC9, and hooray. Alright, travel fit. Now this is probably one of the most misunderstood uh, tactics in that I hear from Unistas. I cannot tell you the number of times I've heard someone on comms get upset because they lost their ship, and they'll say, it was travel fit. I don't understand. I travel fit it, and I still lost it. Travel fits are best when you are already using other tools. So you're using AEVE Gate Check, you are using Udama Scout, you are checking local, things like that. Travel fitting isn't on its own not reliable. Yeah. What is travel fitting? Well, travel fitting is one of two things. You can fit your ship for align time. So you can put in inertial stabilizers. Those will allow you to align faster, which means that you spend less time just in space pointing your ship towards the gate and then getting up to speed. Um, that's your align time. So if you can shrink that down, you spend less time as a lockable target. Um, you can also fit it up for more tank, right? Now, if you put more tank on your ship, the idea there is that you're basically becoming um, the killdozer, right? You can't die before Concord responds. So this really is for high sec. Um, you want to be able to survive long enough. You want to survive a gank. You're not trying to prevent a gank. You're trying to survive one. And the idea being that if you can survive the gank long enough for Concord to arrive and kill the gankers, well, now you can just warp off and go about your day. Hooray. Um, Travel fitting is highly dependent on your skills. It's highly dependent on how you fit the ship. It is highly dependent on when you are traveling. So during EU prime time or North American prime time, there are more likely to be ganking corps active, especially on the weekends or weekdays during those prime times. You are more likely to see more gankers. Um, it also depends on where you're going. So, um, trade hubs are a big place for ganking, right? But also systems along the route to those trade hubs, especially point 0.5 systems like Udama and Ball. Um, all of your trade hubs and the routes to those trade hubs are at risk of being gank locations, but especially those point 0.5 systems because Concord takes forever to respond to aggression in point 0.5 systems. It also depends on how your ship is fit. So, incursions folks who move their battleships, um, who actually fly their battleships from place to place, generally they will take out the super expensive mods and move those separately in a different ship, and then they'll just fly the battleship with extra tank on it, um, just to try to reduce how juicy of a kill is this battleship, right? Um, the other thing that you might do is you might be hauling. And if your cargo is valuable enough, people will try to blow up your hauler. It might be it might be a DSD, it might be a blockade runner, it could be a freighter. Um, it doesn't really matter because if you've got super valuable loot, people will try to blow it up. Okay. The other thing you can do is you can scout. So scouting is more commonly referred to when we're talking about fleets, where you go ahead one system, let the FC know um, what's in the system ahead, and just kind of give that information back to the FC. We call this plus oneing, but you can do it for hauling. You can do it if you're moving expensive ships through unknown space. Um, and essentially, what you want to do is you either have a friend or an alt, and you put them in the system ahead of you, and you check dscan, you check local, you use every resource that's available to you that makes sense to use at that time to get information about what's ahead of you, and be aware of any dangers that are on your route. Um, Now, scouting is not something that should be relied on as the only thing that is going to work. All right, let's talk about hauling. And again, we're not going to go super in depth, but here are a few things that I want to say about hauling as it relates to safe traveling. Don't go to Jita or any other trade hub in a T1 hauler. Um, I know that when you're just getting started in the game, it's tempting because that's all you can fly, and these are the ships that hold all the stuff. Um, but here's the thing, T1 haulers are extremely squishy and will die. And you might be thinking, well, I've been to Jita several times in my T1 hauler and I was fine. And it's like, yes, you're fine until you're not. And all it takes is having something that somebody wants, or somebody being really bored and just being like, here's a T1 hauler. I'm going to blow that thing up because I'm bored and it's easy. So T1 haulers are great, especially things like the Miasmos, right, which holds a crap ton of ore. It's great for like moving from, say, Slays to Stackmon, right? Like that's fine. Moving it from within a system or maybe just one system over, that makes sense. The epithal, it holds PI, it's great. There's ships like that where it makes sense to use them, but you don't want to do it for long hauling from places like your home system to JITA. Definitely don't haul in an orca. So I know that folks, especially if you're in high sec, train into those orcas so they can provide boosts and all that good stuff, and you notice that, hey, I can put a lot of stuff in an orca. That's true, but orcas are not meant for hauling. They are meant to provide boosts on a mining grid in an asteroid or whatever. Don't use them for hauling. They are too slow, and while they can fit a lot of tank, any determined ganker who thinks you have valuable loot will blow up your orca. So just don't haul in an orca. It's not worth the 2.5 bill or whatever it is to buy and replace an orca. It's not worth it. It's just not worth it. Don't haul in your orca. Instead, what you should be doing is you should be hauling in a DST or a freighter. And if you're going to haul in a DST, you need to use the microwarp drive trick. Now, the microwarp drive trick is this. When you jump into a system, you have gate cloak. You're going to align to your next gate. You're going to hit your microwarp drive. You're going to hit your cloak. Then you're going to wait until you get about 2/3, 3/4 of the way through your MWD cycle. You're going to decloak. That's going to bring you to 75% of your maximum velocity. Then you're going to hit warp. Now, when you do this correctly, you will go from gate cloak, align, cloak, decloak, warp off. And at no point should somebody be able to lock you up if done correctly. Now, it is easy to mess up, so I recommend that you practice, and you can practice in a T1 hauler. One time, just to practice the MWD cloak trick, I used a T1 hauler and went from JITA all the way to PC9 using the MWD cloak trick. Now, I don't recommend you do that because you're probably going to lose your T1 hauler doing that, but you can go from one gate to the next gate just practicing this, and um, it is it is something that will save your ship. Okay. Now, there is another ship that once you've trained into DSTs, you can also fly the Blockade Runner. Now, the Blockade Runner is different from the DST. It has a very small cargo hold, but it can fit a Covop's cloak. The Covop's cloak is basically all the Blockade Runner has for tank. So, um, bear that in mind. You need to be using the Covop's cloak if you're going to fly a Blockade Runner. The Blockade Runner is also unscannable, which means that ship scanners and things like that aren't going to work. So it is a target just based on the assumption that you are carrying valuable stuff in your Blockade Runner. So be aware of that, because people will try to blow you up if they see your Blockade Runner. They will assume that you're carrying valuable stuff. Um, the next step up from that is the freighter. And the freighter is big, it is very slow, it takes forever to align, and it warps at just the most unholy of speeds, 1.37 AUs per second, which is ridiculously slow. Now, freighters hold a ton of stuff. Depending on whether you fit it for tank or for cargo, it will hold somewhere between 300 and like 900 or something like that. It's a ridiculous amount of stuff, right? We're talking 300,000 meters cubed, okay, at the low end, and more if you fit it for cargo. The one exception to this is the bowhead. Now, the bowhead is a special kind of freighter. It only carries assembled ships. Now, this is a popular choice for incursion runners because you can put your very expensive battleships in a bowhead and move them from place to place. There are some limitations on what you can carry because uh, the the ship maintenance bay that the freighter has, that the bowhead has some restrictions on what can be in the cargo. So do keep that in mind. I have personally been frustrated by this fact because it means that if I have a hauler full of, like a miasmos full of lyovite for those nation mining colony sites, um, I can't put that in the bowhead, which is very frustrating. So be aware of that. Um, the bowhead can fit quite a bit of tank, and you should invest in good tank for a bowhead because people will blow those up just for fun. Now, DSTs, blockade runners, and freighters are not accessible to alpha accounts. That is an omega only account kind of thing. So what can anyone, regardless of Alpha or Omega, do? They can use the university hauling service. Now, the university hauling service is provided to all members of Eve University for free. The one caveat for that is if you are hauling for profit. So let's say you bring a bunch of ships from JITA to PC9, and you're going to put them up on contract. So you're going to make a little profit on, just bringing stuff from JITA, and you're using the university hauling service. The required tip is 500 ISK per meters cubed. So you'll need to crunch the numbers on that and include a tip in your courier contract to the university hauling service. Do check the forum post and keep an eye out on corp-wide announcements because there are changes that are made to the university hauling service based on strategic operations, based on war, based on all kinds of things like that. But it does serve Stackmon, JITA, and PC9. So use the hauling service. It's so much safer. There's also the university buyback service. Um, Now, this is where you can take all your loot, basically any kind of loot, and sell it to the uni, get paid, and the uni takes what it needs from that and uses it to build ships and all that other good stuff. So it's super cool like that. Now, it serves a number of different places, right? So just some of the systems include Stackmon, Eminion, Averon, Brelister, PC9, and Elysium, the WHC home. Um, these systems are some of the systems that serve. Now, do pay attention to the wiki and corp-wide and channels for announcements on changes to the university buyback because it does change from time to time based on circumstances, war, strategic operations, or just what services are actually being used. Um, and pay attention to what stations certain things are accepted at because Stackmon has a couple different stations where things are accepted at, and different things are accepted at different stations. So check out the wiki, the Eve University wiki, for information about the university buyback service. Okay. Um, Now, we've covered a bunch of different stuff, and there were a bunch of things that I only mentioned in passing. And there are other classes that you can take to learn more about that. So, for example, Intro to DScan, right? We talked about the DScan, but we didn't go super in depth on it. Take the Intro to DScan class. Um, if you're curious about fitting up things, um, take the Intro to Fitting class. If you want to know more about pings and tacticals and bookmarks, take the Intro to Bookmarks class. If you are curious about wormhole space and things like that, take the Intro to Exploration and then take the Intro to Wormhole Mechanics class. And I didn't really go into this, but take the Intro to eWork class because there is some interesting information there that may be useful to you in your safe travels. So, everybody, I wish you all the best. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them uh, as a comment to this video, and I will respond to the questions that I get as soon as I can. Otherwise, if you like this video, give it a like and subscribe to keep updated on the new videos that I make. Also, share this with your friends who play EVE Online and want to know more about getting around safely. Fly safe, my friends. Take care.